second and final New York City mayoral debate set for tomorrow night. Zohran Mamdani, Andrew Cuomo, and Curtis Sliwa will face off one last time before the November election. This, as a new poll gives Mamdani a commanding 14-point lead in the race. Joining us now, political reporter Nick Reisman. Nick, welcome back. Good to have you with us. But of course, all the talk is, this morning especially, that if Curtis Sliwa drops out, then those numbers for Cuomo get him within the margin of error. My question is, Curtis Sliwa, who has been vehemently against dropping out, what's the incentive for him to drop? Why would he drop out? Why does he want to do Andrew Cuomo any favors?
Well, that is the big question, is whether Curtis Sliwa is going to suspend his campaign. You know, it's worth keeping in mind here that even if Curtis Sliwa were to leave the race today or tomorrow after the debate, he's still going to be on the ballot. He's still going to be on row B as the Republican nominee. He's still going to be on the ballot as an independent candidate under the Protect Animals ballot line. Mayor Adams is also still on the ballot, even though he suspended his campaign back on September 28th. So all of these polls that are showing, well, if Andrew Cuomo and Zohran Mamdani are going head to head, it's going to be a much more competitive race. Yes, in a vacuum, that is true, but there is still a full ballot that voters are going to have to choose from going forward. Curtis Sliwa has very little incentive, at least at this point, to drop out. While even you have some of his allies like John Katz-Matidis calling on him to suspend his campaign, keep in mind you've got the New York City GOP chairs this morning saying that they're reaffirming their support for Curtis Sliwa going forward to remain in this race. Sliwa's the head of the ticket. There are a lot of people running down ballot from him for offices like local judge. So he's going to need to carry a lot of those candidates over the finish line as the leader of the party going into election day.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just one of those things. If you're not a Mamdani fan, okay, then vote for Cuomo. I mean, there's not a whole lot of rub here where you need all of these other factions to back out to make this candidate better. If he's not strong enough on his own, maybe he's not the right guy for the job.
And that's the thing, is that Curtis Sliwa over the weekend was on a podcast and he was asked about this dynamic, and he essentially said to Andrew Cuomo directly, you know, where are your voters here, Andrew Cuomo? Where are the people who are supporting you? He made a real populist argument that seemed to make common cause in some part with Zohran Mamdani, who was obviously approaching this from the left side of the political spectrum. But nevertheless, you know, don't bet against populism in this political era right now. We see this propelling Zohran Mamdani potentially to lead City Hall. We saw it propel Donald Trump back to the White House. And it's something that Curtis Sliwa is harnessing, albeit on a somewhat smaller scale, given how few Republicans there are really in New York City overall. But he is still harnessing that as well.
All right, so let's talk about this final debate. Do we expect a change in tone, similar dynamics to last week, which was, you know, Mamdani basically playing prevent defense and everybody taking their shots?
Well, the one thing I'm going to be watching for in this debate is whether Andrew Cuomo is really going to explicitly try to make a play for Republican votes, for conservative-leaning Democrats and independents, people who otherwise would be voting for Curtis Sliwa. Now that is the strategy for the Cuomo campaign. It certainly seems like they are trying to cobble together this coalition that includes moderates and conservatives. I'm skeptical that it is going to be enough, but it's going to be interesting to see how that plays itself out, given that Republicans are very skeptical of Andrew Cuomo, especially when it comes to his COVID policies during the pandemic, as well as his approval of the controversial cashless bail law.
Well, let me ask you this, as it relates to Cuomo. Last week seemed to struggle a little bit, you know, explaining his ideas, which is not necessarily great in a debate. Called out for not mentioning affordability, which is a key issue that Mamdani is running on. So what does he need to now do tomorrow for that final? If he really wants to make his pitch to the voting public out there that I'm your guy, what's he got to do?
Look, I think Zohran Mamdani put in a strong debate performance last week, but it did highlight two glaring weaknesses for him, which we have seen throughout this mayoral campaign. That is on Israel, and it is also on public safety. Those are two issues that are important and potentially activating for a number of voters. It's something that Cuomo was pretty effective at hammering Mamdani on. So if he is able to kind of zero in on those concerns, I think Cuomo could potentially do quite well in the debate. Unfortunately for him, it certainly seems like affordability is still going to be kind of a dominant theme, and that's something that Mamdani does quite well on.
And let me just ask you one thing. When you talk about the photo, for instance, that surfaced over the weekend of Mamdani with the imam, whatnot, but then when you look deeper into the story, you see Mayor Adams, Cuomo, a number of people have met with and been photographed with this imam before. Does that hurt him, do you think? Did the general population don't read deeper into the headline?
I mean, I think what we're seeing here with Mamdani overall is that he is a deeply polarizing candidate. There are people who obviously love Zohran Mamdani, want him to be mayor, have been kind of harnessed by this populist energy that his campaign has been put together, really seemingly out of nowhere. I mean, this time last year, I don't think a lot of people thought Zohran Mamdani was going to be the Democratic Party nominee to be the next mayor of New York City. But on the other end of this, there are people who are legitimately terrified of Zohran Mamdani becoming mayor of New York. So he is a deeply polarizing figure. We haven't had a mayor like that in recent memory who elicits such strong emotions.
The response on both sides like that, exactly. Political reporter Nick Reisman, always good to talk to you, Nick. Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll be talking with you shortly, I'm sure. All right, be sure to stay with CBS News New York for the latest ahead of Election Day. We'll bring you updates on the race for mayor, and you can find that on the air, online, and of course at the CBS News app. Well,